Hi all, and welcome to the 9th episode of the Scotch podcast. Today I'm joined with the coordinator of GAIL of all the 8 schools and the Scotch GAIL champion, Mr. Albano. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Seb. I'm happy to be here. I'm just a little bit disappointed it took till number 9 to get me here. I would have thought I'd be at least top 5.
Yeah. Probably a fair point as well, Mr. A. We've had a few average ones on the podcast, but we'll move on. And the first question is, what is a GAIL program and what is a GAIL champion?
Awesome. So the GAIL program has been around for almost 10 years now. My goodness, how time flies. So it stands for the Global Alliance of Innovative Learners, or Learning, and it actually is a close-knit community of 8 schools across the world that have various projects, various curriculum offerings and opportunities for exchanges. But most of all, what Scotch students would know it for is actually the conference that happens once a year. Obviously, COVID had impacted that a little bit. And a GAIL coordinator, it's my job to look after all 8 schools, but as a GAIL champion, my primary objective is to look after Scotch College.
Very nice. And when we talk about Global Alliance of Innovative Learning, what does innovative learning mean and what are the core principles of this?
Well, Seb, that's a phenomenal question, because if you were to ask 10 people what innovative learning is, you'd get 10 different answers, and not just close difference, like remarkably polar opposite difference. So the idea is each of the 8 schools has areas where they're excelling in and areas where they probably aren't. And as a shared collective, we look at what other schools are doing that is innovative that we're not doing here at Scotch, and we try to take on some of those ideas. I would suggest the fact that we are starting global communication between 8 very ethnically diverse and very culturally diverse schools is innovative in itself, that there's only a handful of programs that schools are involved in where if you wanted to right now, we could hop on and within seconds be in contact with students from India, South America, South Africa, Scotland, New Zealand, the United States, China, right? And to me, that's innovative, that especially in my area of expertise as a historian, no longer do I have to rely on books written by Western perspectives. If I want to learn about Chinese history, I can actually get some Chinese perspective from that. And to me, that in itself is innovative. But it's also about pushing the boundaries of what education really is. Is it an 8-day workday? Is it tests and exams? Are there different ways that students learn? And I think just looking back from when I was a student, how I learned and how teachers were very, very rote in their learning, that, memorize this, to where now we actually look at the hows and whys, and we're more about analysis and evaluation. It's about pushing those ideas. What's next for school? Do we go to a 4-day school week? Do we look at student well-being as important as ATARs and grades? To me, that's the innovative learning, that it's not just the students, it's the staff and it's the principals and heads that really have some learning to do around this as well.
And GAIL's across the globe, these 8 countries from New Zealand to Scotland to the United States of America. And in what ways does GAIL empower educators to be responsible global citizens?
That's a really good question as well, Seb, and I appreciate the quality and time you've taken in devising these questions. I thought it was just going to be a bubblegum interview of, hey, GAIL's good, let's do things. The really, really cool thing here is, we're dealing with some schools that have significant social issues that we at Scotch don't have, right? We look at probably the big one that sticks out would be the role of women within India. And it's nice for our students to have that global perspective, but also for the girls at Woodstock to hear the experiences of our students at Scotch, to give them hope that perhaps there is change coming, that it's and one of the most heartbreaking things for me was we had a conference on gender equality, and I got an email afterwards from one of the students from India just saying how empowering it was, because she knows once she leaves the safety of Woodstock's wall, she goes back to her village and she's expected to, be part of an arranged marriage. She'll be expected to just be a housewife. But she knows that her daughter will have better opportunities through being involved in GAIL, because she now knows that it's not the role of women everywhere in the world to do that. And it's not just that. We look at the environmental impacts of, the climate change and how that's impacting different countries. The distribution of wealth, for instance, with our South African countries. And we have a very, very close connection to Robert Gordon's in Scotland, obviously through our connection with being founded is for the Sons of Scotch at Scotch. And, it was very, very touching when we were in the United States. We had a memorial for the 9/11 victims, and one of the ex-students from KUA was actually killed by terrorists during the whole war on terror very publicly. And it was just, it's neat to get those different perspectives, because I don't think Australian students think or worry about terrorism or think or worry about gender equality or think or worry about the lights being turned off because of power shedding like in South Africa. So it's nice for our students to get those perspectives, but it's also really, really important that those students at the countries where these things are happening feel supported and get our ideas on how to fix these. Because again, the innovative, going back to the last question, ideas, this is the generation of kids that are going to become adults to fix the problems that my generation has created in these countries. And, we're not expecting to impact everybody's life, but if we could make one or two significant impacts in real game changers moving forward, people who are going to actually instigate difference in this world, then we've done a good thing with GAIL.
So when we talk about the significance, and on the GAIL websites, we have this purpose statement, and how do we foster this culture of creativity and collaboration in GAIL?
Yeah, so it's really, really interesting time for GAIL, because the original 8 heads that organized this and put it together, only one of them remains. So this upcoming conference that we're going to in New Zealand will be a real opportunity for the heads and the champions and the students to really forge a new way forward for GAIL. Because I think it would be fair to say that COVID really surprised the world in terms of the importance of online connections and the importance of the things you've mentioned, right? In terms of continuity, the things of, we could be in lockdowns, but with the power of the internet and the power with the IT we have and social media, that we can remain connected, and the learning doesn't have to stop because a pandemic occurs. And it could be anything, right? There's so much disruption in the world at the moment that I think it's really, really important. And I'm glad you brought up the website, because we did spend a lot of time during the COVID era of designing a website to get students online. So there is that 24/7 aspect of, again, I didn't have this when I was a kid, but if we wanted to right now, within seconds, we could be chatting with a student from India. And, you have these upcoming Stewart House interviews, and you could talk to somebody from India. How do you guys do your leadership? Is there anything that we could learn from you? So it really is about listening as much as it is about talking as well. Like there's 7 schools out there with some really good ideas. So we don't have to always be the one saying, this is what we do at Scotch. This is how it works. This is how it should be. How can we do things better here?
And when we look from this global perspective, once again, are there any geographical regions where GAIL has made a significant impact?
Well, I'd like to believe we've made a significant impact in every single region that GAIL has reached. And again, when we talk about impact, Seb, I think it's important to understand that impact isn't always seen or recognized, right? An impact can be anything from a nuclear bomb dropping on a place to, some student who was having a rough day at school that day, going to bed that night in a better place emotionally than they were that morning. So I'd like to believe in terms of impact, the impact of GAIL is going to be different for every student that gets involved in GAIL. I've personally had students here at Scotch who have told me it's changed their life, right? In a positive way, that it kept reasons for them coming to school. It changed their perspective on globalization and the importance of connections with other cultures. And more importantly, it made them realize, that we do have a very privileged place in Australia, and to recognize that that privilege isn't universal across the world is a wake-up call to some students, right? But again, it goes back to the impact of the young lady that wrote me the email, and it wasn't just one. There's a handful talking about the change that will come. It might be generational change, but there will be change from this. We had a session as well that was run by KUA in the United States that was around the acceptance of different sexualities and different people who, I guess, would not fall into the typical male-female category of gender, And again, the emails we get back from the students about how, they feel safer after that session because they know there's like-minded people. To me, that's the impact that we should be looking for. The world's not going to change overnight, right? It's those little, and I know this is going to sound horribly predictable, but it's the little ripples. I rely on those ripple effects to make the big impact. But if, we can start one or two of those ripples, then again, GAIL has done its job.
As GAIL was across the globe, obviously communication is through such a different aspect than just your normal day-to-day communications. And when we talk about past students and we see that this has been a life-changing event, do you think that comes down to the ways that GAIL is able to communicate across the globe?
Absolutely. And I think it's also just that importance of getting out of one's own safety zone. I think a lot of people are really, really confident and comfortable within the walls of Scotch College or within the city of Adelaide or within the borders of Australia. But when you're put outside of your comfort zone and you're all of a sudden confronted with viewpoints that you may not necessarily agree with, or you may not necessarily have thought about, or that may not necessarily actually impact you as a human being, I think that really opens up your mind to true critical thinking that, hey, you know what, this doesn't impact me, but my goodness, I'd love to help to make a difference to this person who it does impact, or this group of people that it does impact. And absolutely, the communication is key. I don't think something like GAIL could have existed before the internet or before things like Snapchat or TikTok, where, and again, going back to the website we've developed, it tries to encompass all of those social media things into one site. So we keep students there communicating with each other. And, so far it's gotten off to a little bit of a slow start, but the conference coming up will really sort of be like a snowball. Have you heard that acronym? Snowball starts small and then it rolls down and turns into a big...
down the mountain.
Yeah. And then before you know it, you have a snowman.
So, yeah. And the importance of, so, let's say, perspective that you're just trying to go on with in giving students the opportunity to collect thoughts across the globe and from other people in different socio-economic or other sort of standards is critically important. And if we go back a couple of years to when COVID was looming, before COVID you had the opportunity to visit some countries across the globe and that. And what was your favourite country to explore and that the students got to experience?
Again, I know this is going to sound like a cop-out, Seb, but I think there's an interesting story for each place we visited. So I don't personally have a favorite. As you know, I'm very, very well traveled, so I have a favorite, place all around the world. South America was South Africa was amazing because on day one. We're all sort of jet lagged. We get into a Jeep and they take us into an area, and around the first corner we come across a pride of lions eating a giraffe, right? And for Scotch students, you don't see that, right? It's not something you see. Then the United States, the year after that, we went to the United Nations, and just to be able to see the Security Council and see the General Assembly in action, like that's a lifelong dream for me. And to be able to share that with students was even more special. And then the next year in China, going to see the Terracotta Warriors bicycling across the Great Wall of China. I wasn't personally on that one, but Miss Kemp and Miss Wallace expressed to me that those were highlights that they'll remember for the rest of their lives. And I brought Miss Kemp up to the top of the Empire State Building at 2 a.m. one night, just because that's when the city lights are at their greatest. And you never forget things like that, right? Like New York City is one of the greatest cities in the world, and to see all of the things you see in movies right there, that is a lifelong memory. And I'm looking forward to New Zealand this year and then Peru next year. And then perhaps it might be time for me to hand off that GAIL champion wand to the next person to experience these things, because I think it really can change an educator. Like I feel I'm a better teacher. I feel like I'm a better educator. And most importantly, I feel like I'm a better human being for taking part in GAIL and all that GAIL has given back to me.
And in the next few years, or maybe in the next 10 years, or the next decade, or the next generation, where do you see GAIL moving forwards, and what are some of the initiatives that you might see or be expecting from GAIL to go into?
Well, I think GAIL is going to sort of have to sort of just be part of what changes in terms of technology, what changes in terms of innovation. I think GAIL is largely going to be, at the forefront of all that, but it's going to have to conform to the way social media conforms. It's going to have to conform to, limitations of the internet going forward. What I would really, really like to see is more opportunity for third parties to become involved in GAIL. I think that there's privilege and elitism around the schools that are involved in GAIL. They're all high-quality private schools in each of the areas. I'd love to see lower socioeconomic schools, be invited to some of these conferences, be given the opportunity to take part in this, because again, we have so much opportunity just being at places like Scotch that I feel like some of that opportunity can be shared out amongst lower socioeconomic schools or schools that don't have that opportunity. There's change makers in every school across South Australia. There's change makers in every school near these GAIL schools. So I'd really like to see that GAIL would embrace other schools, not maybe to become part of the actual GAIL Alliance, but to actually benefit from the GAIL Alliance. Something as simple as, and again, I know there's copyright around TED Talks, but there's no reason we couldn't do things like GAIL Talks where we get experts in the field of globalization and these areas we're discussing and invite lower socioeconomic schools or people who have a keen interest in that to take part in those and to actually not just be a guest, but to be part of that discussion, because it's one thing to discuss world problems from a pedestal or from the elite schools that are involved, but there's also other issues within our 8 countries that we might not necessarily see as the privileged schools.
And lastly, how would you summarize GAIL and the GAIL experience in one sentence?
I think I'll start my sentence with this. I would suggest if students are looking for a activity that would potentially be life-changing for them and open their eyes to ideas and issues that they may not be aware of or passionate about, this is the program for them.
Awesome. Thank you. So thanks for coming on the show today. Thanks for coming on the podcast. It's been excellent to talk about GAIL. It's been excellent to hear your thoughts about GAIL as a global community and the use of technology, how they're able to support other countries, how they're able to make greater change, and how you've summarised it. It's a great experience for students to have a life-changing experience and to be passionate and to develop greater perspective about the world that they are truly living in. So that's a wrap for episode number 9.
Can I just say one more thing? With that phenomenal finale, I would have thought again, I would have been higher than number 9.
Awesome. Well, we'll finish on that, hey? Guys, thank you, and we'll see you for episode number 10.